Let's bring in Josh Rogin. He's a CNN political analyst and Washington Post columnist, and of course, a fervent China watcher. Josh, as you heard from Blake, China hasn't responded yet, but the incredible anger that we saw over Pelosi's visit, including firing missiles over the island, what does that make you think the reaction is going to be to this surprise visit?
Well, it's clear that the Chinese Communist Party is viewing these visits by U.S. congressional delegations differently now. They're asserting a more aggressive response to make the point that China is powerful enough to exert control over who could go to Taiwan and who can't. Now, it won't be as big as the Pelosi delegation because, as Daniela pointed out, this is not the third in line to the U.S. presidency, but they will feel compelled to respond, and we're likely to see a tightening of the economic and military coercion that they're subjecting the people of Taiwan to, which has included cutting off Taiwanese exports, arresting Taiwanese businessmen, shooting missiles over the island, surrounding the island with military exercises. We're in a new era, Alex, of increased hostility coming from Beijing toward Taiwan, and each one of these visits will be used as an excuse, as a pretext for the CCP to turn the screws.
It is obviously important to note that this is a much more junior delegation. This is not the person who is in that line of succession. But what, aside from showing U.S. support for Taiwan, might this delegation be trying to accomplish?
Well, there's a lot of business between the United States and Taiwan, not just over technology, not just over trade. There's just a growing and robust relationship between the two democracies, and there is some value to showing up. The Taiwanese government, the Taiwanese people appreciate it when people come to the island, especially U.S. lawmakers, to show that the Chinese government can't isolate them. But we'll have to wait and see what comes from this trip, but you could be sure that there are deals to be made that will bolster not only the diplomatic relationship, but the economic and trade relationship as well. When
Pelosi was there, the White House took pains to say she's the Speaker of the House. She can basically do whatever she wants. We saw there that delegation did fly on a U.S. government plane that very clearly said United States of America across it. So that means that the Biden administration clearly knew that they were going. So what do you think the White House's reaction would be to this?
Well, the White House's senior Asia official, Kirk Campbell, briefed reporters on Friday and said very clearly that they support continued congressional delegation trips to Taiwan. They were against the Pelosi trip privately for a specific reason, because they knew that the Chinese government was planning to overreact and that they would have to deal with that. But now that that's over, they're trying to enforce the status quo. And the status quo is that U.S. delegations can go whenever they want. And when they go, the U.S. military and the U.S. government supports that. And holding that line is really important for the Biden administration, because they know that if the Chinese government is allowed to stop these delegations, then their appetite will only grow with the eating, and they'll try to exert more power and control of Taiwan as time goes by.
And again, these military drills that we saw in the wake of the Pelosi visit, the anger that we heard from Beijing in the wake of the Pelosi visit, do you think that that makes it more likely that we would see military action, war over Taiwan, versus the peaceful reunification that Beijing insists it wants with Taiwan?
Right. I've argued in the Washington Post that Beijing's overreaction and retaliation against Taiwan after the Pelosi visit shows that they've changed their view, that no longer are they seeking peaceful reunification as they claim, because they're not trying to win the hearts and minds of the Taiwanese people. They're trying to scare them to death and coerce them. And I think it's more and more Taiwanese officials and U.S. officials believe that they are preparing for an attack, and they are leaving aside peaceful reunification. Now, that doesn't mean that war is inevitable. What it means to me, and to a lot of people that I trust, is that we need to increase the deterrence by supporting Taiwan, by arming them to the teeth so that the Chinese government doesn't think that they can attack Taiwan easily and take it. That should be the lesson from Ukraine, is that you try to stop the war by giving the smaller country help before the attack, not after the attack. But it remains to be seen whether or not we're actually going to do that.
Right. Of course, President Biden in that situation was worried about provoking President Putin. There is reporting that President Biden may meet with President Xi Jinping this fall in November. Do you think delegations like these last two that we've seen make it harder for the two men to make progress in talks?
I think there's an interest on both sides in having President Xi and President Biden meet either at the G20 or at another opportunity this fall. It makes a lot of sense. You don't want to have the two world superpowers where their leaders can't talk to each other. That's not a good thing. If the Chinese government wants to use these visits to avoid setting up a meeting between Xi and Biden, well, that's on them. But the bottom line is that these visits are going to continue, and eventually the Chinese are going to have to either like it or lump it.
All right, Josh Rogin, thank you so much for your
Anytime.
expertise. Appreciate you coming in.